All right, Anthony. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I just happened to slide in your DMs because I've been following you for a while, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and learning about your experience about moving to Italy and living in Italy and all of that jazz. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? What you're up to, and what even drove you to move to Italy from the
Sure.
States.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be on, Bo. So, I'm originally from just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and I was 29 years old when I decided to move to Italy. And kind of the long story short is I grew up in, like I said, outside of Atlanta, never really lived outside of my hometown, really within 20 minutes of the house I grew up in. I studied mechanical engineering, worked as an engineer, um, became a licensed professional engineer, worked for about 9 years in industry, and then just decided, various things happen in my life and my friend's life, and all the signs pointed to, you know, life is short, your health is not guaranteed forever, and while I have good health, I want to take advantage of it and do something a little bit unusual, which was for me moving somewhere different, somewhere quite different. Also, because I have, like I believe you do, Italian ancestry, I was
Mm-hmm.
able to get my Italian citizenship. And part of that application process, I chose to do by moving to Italy and residing in Italy. So it was, on one hand, it was an excuse to have the experience of moving to Italy, but it was also like literally the dual purpose of going to apply and get my Italian passport. So it was kind of a double mission. But really, I just wanted to have a different experience. So I went to Italy for the first time for a vacation with my cousin and just fell in love with it like everybody does. It's easy to fall in love with Italy. Have you been to Italy before?
No, it is, but man, is it on my bucket list? It's like probably my number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Well, when you come out, let me know. I'll show you all the spots and tell you where to go, where
I
not to go.
appreciate
Really,
that
you should go everywhere. Um, but
because you've been to you've been to all 20
Yeah, yeah.
regions.
So Italy has 20 regions, kind of like states. Italy's on
Mm-hmm.
one hand big, but also small. It's three-quarters the size of California by landmass, but it's just from north to south, it just changes so much. The variety is pretty insane. And that really appealed to me. So after that first trip, I very heavily researched the possibility of citizenship, and in doing so, learned that I can move to Italy and apply there. And so about a month after that trip, I decided I was going to move to Italy for a year, and I basically quit my job, sold my house, moved to Italy. It was supposed to just be
Wow.
1 year, but I just loved it so much. I stayed. That was 3.5 years ago, about when I moved.
Oh, that's so awesome. So where do you reside in
I live
Italy
in
now?
Umbria, the central region. It's really geographical center of
Hmm.
Italy. So it's I'm about halfway between between Rome and Florence.
And so, did you speak the language at all when you
When
moved?
I moved, I had done a bit of a crash course. So when I first came to Italy for that first trip, I didn't speak any other than ciao and grazie. And then when I decided
Yeah.
to move, I said, okay, I need to learn Italian. So basically, 5 months before I started doing lessons, I did 3 hours a week, like three one-on-one lessons per week. And then I
Hmm.
did a lot of self study, watch shows, listen to podcasts,
Mm.
everything I could. So by the time I got here, I was conversational. By no means fluent, but conversational. And then from there, it just grows as you're immersed in it. So I started from
Yeah.
zero, but I will say for anybody who's considering moving to Italy, I mean, or any country, if you can get at least a little conversational by day one, it's a different experience. And there's 2025, there's so many ways to do that. You can learn a language remotely now before you set foot in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. I'm actually doing that myself right now. I started a year ago. I just was like, you know what? I want to learn Italian. And so I did the same thing. I hired a private tutor. There's so many apps now that you can go out and hire people. I mean, she's from Italy. She lives in Italy. I've only been doing once a week, and I think what you just said, immersion is key. You can learn once a week, but the more often you do it throughout the week, the better you're going to be. I'm nowhere near. I will admit I'm nowhere near conversational. I know like the very basics, and I try and listen to Italian, but to me they talk so fast. It's kind of like Spanish, right? When you listen to someone talking Spanish, you're like, Jesus, you're like going 1,000 miles an hour, But it's such a beautiful language, and she says the same thing. She's like, look, if you want to be extremely fluent, there's one of two ways. Either you need to immerse yourself in doing it daily, or you just need to move to Italy for at least 3 months to really get a good understanding of it.
Yeah,
She said 6 months at a
yeah,
minimum.
at a minimum, and also you have to make a conscious effort of where you move in Italy. I could go on and on about this, so feel free to cut me off. But if you go to, like, a lot of
No,
people, like a lot
please.
of Americans, their dream is to live in Florence, so they move to Florence and they realize they're just surrounded by other Americans. Florence is kind of the worst place to learn Italian
Mm,
because unless you go out of your way to make friends that only speak Italian, you're not going to learn that much there. So, like, I was lucky when I moved to Italy. I literally was put in a village with like 4,000 people where basically nobody spoke English. So that was the perfect way to learn Italian because you just needed to. Otherwise, you wouldn't meet people,
yeah.
wouldn't be able to get stuff done. But like you said,
Birth by
yeah,
fire.
exactly. But like you said, you can do this remotely, and I mean, if you're doing one lesson a week, that's awesome. That's one more than anybody else is doing. It's one thing to talk about learning
Hmm.
a language, but to actually do it, it's hard. It's a lot of work to learn a language, but it's so rewarding because it just pays off, and being able to
It
connect with
is.
people and just have unique experiences.
It is. Yeah, it's right now we're learning uh the gender side of words, and then understanding how to use articles, understanding how to pluralize words, and it gets for me it gets so confusing. And the only confusing part is like I know you'll understand this and the audience might, but like in Italian, like if you speak a masculine word, like lavoro is to work, right? That's a masculine word because it ends in an o. If you want to pluralize that, right, it'd be
Mm-hmm.
lavori because it ends in an I. But then there are some words where if it ends in an e, it could be feminine, it could be masculine or feminine or plural, and I'm like what? Like then you get confused on which article to use.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's words like egg, which is uova, singular, and plural is also
Yeah,
uova. It just doesn't change.
yeah,
So there's it's like there's
yeah,
80% where there's a rule, and the other 20% you just have to memorize. There's no sense to it.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly what she said. She's like, you're just gonna have to memorize it. It's so. What's so. I mean, Italy is so rich in culture, right? I mean, there is so much history in Italy, and she was explaining to me this I found fascinating. And I don't know if you can relate to this or if you agree with this, but she said, Italians are very known for using their
Mm.
hands. And she said way back when, she said when Italy was broken up into all of these different regions, each region was a different language. And so when people would travel to each region, they would use their hands to try and communicate. And that's kind of what made Italians always use their hand, because that's how they communicated with one another when they didn't speak the language, or it was similar but not
Yeah,
exact.
that's interesting. I haven't really looked too much into the
Hmm.
history of the hand gestures, but I had a friend point out to me, and he's right. Italy is a. What's strange about Italy is that the language changes, and your teacher's probably told you this. The language changes so much within the country. So from north to south, it's so different, even
Hmm.
from one town to the next. So 5 miles down the road, they'll have a different dialect than they do where I currently am. So there's all these changes in the verbal language, but the hand gestures are the same throughout the whole country. And it's like, why is that? Is it because of maybe
Hmm.
what you just described, in addition to maybe, I don't know, film and movie? Everybody's watching the same film and movie, so they just kind of, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny to hear her talk about the other regions because they're very. I don't even know what the word is, but um, there's some regions where they're just like, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh no, not
Yeah.
not there, you know.
Yeah, there's weird prejudices and,
um,
and histories, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
That town, they're the worst. Everybody from there is terrible because we have this long history from medieval times. There were wars, and I'm saying
Yes.
that was a long
Yeah.
time ago, guys. You can let that stuff go.
Yeah. Yeah. She's from Sicily, which, okay, here's another mind bender. I didn't even know Sicily has their own language. It's not even Italian is not their native language. It's Sicilian. And it sounds very different.
Yes, very different, and they're very proud of it. Obviously, if you go to
Yes.
Sicily and you speak Italian, they'll understand you. But the more you get outside of city centers, and you're like in rural villages, yeah, they just speak strictly Sicilian, and then it's even their sub
Mhm.
dialects. Naples is the same way. Naples,
Mhm.
they speak Napoletano. They don't really speak Italian. Of course, they'll understand
Mhm.
Italian, but you'll
Mhm.
find there's even like I have friends who I met their family, and her dad could speak Italian, but he would just drift back into Neapolitan. And she would have to tell him, like, Dad, you can't speak Neapolitan to him because he doesn't understand what you're saying. He just could. That's just their nature, is to speak in their
Yeah.
native language, which is, it's not even a dialect; it's a language at that point, like you said.
Right. Right. So, how long did it take you to get your citizenship?
That's a good question. So from when I started to like when I first, printed out the first forms, when I had passport in hand, was about 14 months, which is kind of record time.
That's quick.
And it basically, that was broken up into, I started collecting all the paperwork myself in the US, which took about
Yeah.
5 months. And then I moved to Italy, where I was going to submit my application there. And from when I arrived in Italy and submitted my paperwork to when I was recognized as a citizen, that was about 4 months. That's very fast because I was
Mm.
extremely motivated. That as soon as I learned that I could move to Italy and do this, I didn't think about anything else. All I was doing was collecting the paperwork, which
Mm.
is a lot. Because it kind of makes buying a house look easy in terms of all the documentation required and all the hoops you have to jump through. But yeah, it was pretty quick for me.
Yeah, because I know people that, at least here in the States, that are trying to get dual citizenship. I mean, some of them, it takes 10 years for it to even happen.
Yes, yeah, and it depends. So one of the I have a couple businesses which we can get into. One of which is called Become Italiani, with a business partner. She's an attorney. She's based in the
Hmm.
States, and we help people get their citizenship. So we've seen and studied how it's different from one consulate to the next. There's 10 consulates in the U.S. Some of them can turn around applications in 2 to 3 years. Others will be at the longer end of that. And most of that time is literally just waiting. Sometimes it's just getting the appointment. Can be, if you book the appointment today, it will be 5 years from now. And then you submit your paperwork, and then they have 2 more years to review it. So you're looking at 7 years. But we tell people, we as a business, but I also tell people personally, if it's something you're even thinking about doing, if let's say it's going to take you 5 years, those 5 years are going to pass no matter what. So if you're 40 years old, do
Yeah.
you want to be 45 with or without a European passport and all the benefits that come with that?
Yeah.
So it's a personal thing. It's an endeavor. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint.
So let's actually get into that, because Italy is about to sign a law potentially, because it used to be that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be that if you, the lineage was up to your great grandparents, you could apply and potentially get Italian citizenship. But now they're limiting it to stopping it at the line of the grandparents. And I think there's other restrictions that are potentially going to be put in place as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, yeah, like you said, previously the limit was, there actually was no limit. There was no generational limit to how far back you could go, as long as your ancestor was alive in Italy after it unified in 1861. So before 1861, there was no such thing as Italy. There were all those different nation states that you were just talking about. So as
Mm-hmm.
long as it was until then, but there was no generational limit, so it could have been great grandparent, great great, as long as it was after 1861, and then you would have to prove that you were connected to this ancestor by showing a continuous chain of documentation, birth and marriage certificates connecting you to this person, and importantly, you had to show that if they left Italy And in our case, we're talking about the United States, but it could have been anywhere in the world. Before the year
Hmm.
1992, if an Italian left Italy and got citizenship anywhere else in the world, they would lose their Italian citizenship automatically. So if they came to the U.S. in my case, it was 1920. My great grandfather, if he got his U.S. citizenship, he would have lost the Italian citizenship. The timing of that was important because the law previously was that if they lost their Italian citizenship after the next person in line was born, so the next person in line being the next person leading to you, the applicant. So let's say it was your great grandfather and your grandfather. If your grandfather was born and then his father, your great grandfather, gave up his Italian citizenship, that was okay because the law states, the 1912 law states that citizenship is passed on at birth from an Italian citizen. And as long as you can prove that continuous chain, if you qualify, like for example for you, if you do qualify, what it means is you are already an Italian citizen. It's just not recognized yet because you could have inherited it from
Mm.
your parents, who could have inherited it from their parents, et cetera, et cetera. What's
Mm. Mm.
changed is now the generational limit, like you said, now it can only go up to the grandparents, so second generation. And now, kind of the most shocking thing over the very recently is the naturalization. If the ancestor left Italy, it now states that if they had any other citizenship besides Italian at death, then you would not qualify. So if your
Oh.
grandfather on his death certificate, if it says that he was American, or if he had his U.S. citizenship and Italian, then you would be disqualified. And that, on top of the 2 generation limit, that just blew this whole thing up for so many people because most ancestors did naturalize, at least in the U.S. Most of the diaspora went to South America, so there are more Italians in Brazil and Argentina than there are in the U.S. Brazil's
Hmm.
number one, Argentina's number two. I might have those reversed, and then U.S. is number three. So
Mm.
Italy was just getting overwhelmed with applications for people wanting to claim citizenship from very old ancestry, and there are parts of their intention that I sort of agree with. They want to make sure that people are getting the citizenship for reasons of wanting to actually reconnect with the culture, not simply get a European
Hmm.
passport to then
Hmm.
move to Spain or Portugal, which is what a lot of South Americans do because there's better jobs there and they already speak the language. That's not all of them. I know
Mm.
many of them here who have come to Italy, gotten their Italian citizenship, and are very happy living and love Italy and contribute to the economy, etc., pay taxes. But the reasons where the system was getting overwhelmed with a lot of applications, but the law they put in place was just so extreme. And no, the motivations, I can sit here and hypothesize on the motivations, but what they have stated is they want it to be more people have a more close connection with Italy. They didn't put a language requirement in like people thought. That was one of the proposed changes. That one didn't make it
Mm.
through Parliament. I think that would have made more sense than this, frankly, this bogus naturalization clause that they put in, because that just, I mean, if your ancestor decided to become a U.S. citizen and then died the next day, what effect does that have on your closeness to Italian culture? I mean, there's nothing
Hmm.
on how close you are and how devoted you are to the culture, and they're kind of screwing over a lot of people. And this is mostly affecting Italian Americans because when Italians went to South America, there wasn't really a system of becoming a Brazilian or Argentinian citizen, so that doesn't affect them. They'll be affected by the generational limit. Italian Americans will be
Hmm.
affected by not only the generational limit but the naturalization. So it's sad what they're doing, especially with the country. Now I'm getting off into opinions here, but I'm
No, go
of
ahead.
the so my company Become Italian. It's me who I handle a lot of like the marketing and the finance, and then
Hmm.
my business partner is an attorney. She'll keep it more down the line, but I'm just here mouthing off at this point. Um, they
That's fine.
they're losing population. They know that people are leaving, young people are leaving, quote unquote, the best and brightest leave to find better job opportunities in Germany, Belgium, the UK. and yet they're just yet again shooting themselves in the foot by not encouraging people to come here, who really want to be part of the culture. People like me, who like now I wouldn't qualify under these new rules. If I were playing today, I wouldn't qualify.
Sure.
So it's really disappointing. There are some other doors that, like you said, it still needs to be signed by the president. So as of this recording, it hasn't been. So it's not official, but within the next day or two, it's almost guaranteed to be official. But the wording needs
Yeah, I think May 27th is the day they're going to
May
vote,
20th.
right?
They've already voted. It's already voted through. Everything's done. Literally, the president.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was May 20th. So 2 days ago, the chamber. So Italy has a bicameral parliament. There's the Senate and then the chamber. The Senate did the debating and voting last week, and then the chamber did this week. And the chamber basically didn't make any changes to what the Senate had released. So now the president just needs to sign it. And then, so we have this new text of this law that we now have to wait for the office, for the government to issue basically a circolare, instructions to all the offices to say how to actually process this. One of the things that could be a positive from this, for people who are now disqualified under these new changes, if they are first or second generation, if they're disqualified because of this naturalization stuff, they might have an avenue to move to Italy, get some kind of visa to legally be in Italy for 2 years, and after 2 years, then petition to naturalize as an Italian citizen, instead of the 10 years that it would take a normal immigrant to live in Italy. They would have to learn Italian. You'd have to get a level B1 Italian language certificate. So that's another layer of complexity. But a lot of doors closed, some small doors open. So there's a little bit of silver lining to this, but on the whole, it's not good. And we'll see. A lot of people will be challenging this in court. This is just what they've done is they shifted the workload from the offices to the courts. So it's like this
To the
problem
court.
is not
Yeah.
going to go away. A lot of people are going to be challenging this. So we'll see.
So if people already have their application in prior to the law being signed into effect, I mean, how does this affect
So
them?
what they have said is if you have submitted your application to a consulate before midnight on midnight March 27th, 2025. So before March 27th, if you submitted your application, you'll be grandfathered into the old rules. If you filed your application in court, for those who were having to apply through the Italian court system because they were going through a female ancestor, if they filed before that date, they would be grandfathered into the old rules. And they are also this needs to be ironed out once they release the instructions. But from what it looks like, if somebody even had an appointment booked, so not that they actually had the appointment, but if they had an appointment confirmed and booked, let's say the appointment is in 2028, if they have that appointment booked before March 27th of 2025, they should also be grandfathered in, which would be really great for a lot of people. So hopefully that goes through as it's written. So
I knew I should have started my process last year. I knew I should have
yeah,
done it.
you're not alone. It's one of those things, and we've learned this with the business. This is the case for me too. This is not something that people hear about and then the next day act on. I heard about this. I don't know, 2 years before I actually started the process, because you hear about it and you think, oh, Italian passport sounds cool. It's probably complicated, and then you kind of forget about it. It's a very long sales cycle to actually get somebody to want to move forward,
Yeah.
because it is a big decision. It's a second citizenship, so
Yep.
it's easy to kick yourself, but it's not something you just pick up the phone and call and make it happen overnight. It takes time. So there may be options for you. I don't know the details of your ancestry. I'm happy to talk about that offline if you want, but we'll see. Hopefully there are other paths for people like you.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I started to look into it last year, and like I just started on ancestry.com trying to, because that's a very good database of a lot of kind of the documents that you're talking about. The birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, and both of my great grandparents on my paternal side are from Italy, and uh, one side is from Montegusto, and the other side is from Torino. And I was able to find birth certificates, very hard to find marriage
Okay.
certificates. And then the death certificates were U.S. based because they died here in the U.S. Both of my great grandparents on my paternal side moved here. I mean, for like most people, because of
Hmm.
work. You know, they started working in the steel mills and originally moved to Pittsburgh and then moved to Gary, Indiana, where you know they were building U.S. Steel and a bunch of other steel mills. So, um, and they were the last ones to even speak the language. Like my grandparents and didn't speak it at all. They kind of understood it early on, but I think they just lost that
Hmm.
skill. I think a lot of uh, immigrants did that because they wanted their children to adapt to U.S. culture and speak English and not be because you know back in the day you know immigrants were there was a lot of prejudice. You know there was
Hmm.
prejudice against Italians, prejudice against Irish, you know all of that stuff. So I think they wanted to try and get their children to assimilate as much as possible and kind of gave up on the language.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I was similar. My it was my great grandparents. My grandparents spoke it, but they spoke like some version of rural Neapolitan, but it was just on the phone when they were talking to their
Mm,
relatives. They didn't bother teaching that to my dad and his siblings because realistically, what's the point? And you're right, there was a lot of discrimination where
yeah.
it's like, you need to speak English because English means work. It means you can find a
Yep.
job and have an easier life. And it's take your good with your bad. They brought a lot of great to this country. This country meaning the U.S. I'm currently in Italy,
Yeah.
but they it's too bad that the language couldn't have been maintained more. But I don't fault them for that, of course. But now we're bringing it back.
No. No. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. So how do you think this law is going to affect your business of becoming Italian?
Yeah, I mean,
It's going to shrink your customer base quite a
yeah,
bit,
that's a
right?
good question. It will shrink the customer base for people, obviously, because of the generational limit and the naturalization. I think that, like I said, a lot of this is going to be going to the courts. So for those willing to pay for an Italian lawyer, which is not our company, we're not licensed in Italy, but people who choose to challenge this in court, if they still want to move forward, then we'll still be able to help them get all the documents they need to present that to an Italian lawyer and present their case. But also, there's other ways for people to engage with living in Italy or becoming Italian. So there's getting citizenship through marriage, which we can help people with. There's people who want to get visas. So Italy now has a digital nomad visa, which is great. So they're at least moving forward in some directions. So if
Mm.
people really want to move to Italy, then we can help them with that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things go forward. We're just taking it one day at a time. Um, Another thing I should say, another good thing that just opened up. This is kind of hidden in the text, or it's not. You don't see it in the headlines, but for Italians who left Italy and went to Italians who left Italy and became citizens of another country before 1992, so at the time when they would have lost Italian citizenship, if they want to reclaim it, so we would get these requests quite a bit. It's like, I'm Italian, I left Italy, I became a U.S. citizen in 1986, I want to get my citizenship back. It used to be that they would have to relocate to Italy for about a year and reside in Italy and put the declaration of intent in there, which just isn't feasible for people. It's like, I can't just uproot my life and go back to Italy for a year. Now, as of
Hmm.
this new law,
Hmm.
they don't have to do that. They can just submit documentation to the consulate in the U.S., which that's really good for those first generation people that just came over here, that just went to the U.S. And if they naturalized before 1992, that door opens for them to reclaim it much easier. And we
Hmm.
can help people with
Hmm.
that as well. So to answer your question, we will see going forward, but it's part of running a business is being able to adapt.
So prior to the law changes, what would it typically cost for someone to try and attain their Italian citizenship?
So the cost really depends on how much effort the person is willing to put in. So you can do the whole process again. This, as we're speaking, the things are changing right now, but assuming
Hmm.
moving forward things are more or less the same in terms of the required documentation, etc., which it will be. It's not going to change that much. If you do it all on your own, meaning you collect all the birth, marriage, death certificates. You get the documents from Italy. You handle doing all the translations yourselves, getting the documents certified. If you do that all on your own, at a minimum, you're going to be paying the fees to the consulate, which now are about 600 euros, if I'm not mistaken. And then the fees paid to all the states and agencies to get all those birth and marriage certificates. And that usually comes to around $600 to $800 when you add up all the $20, $30 fees and checks you got to cut to get all the certifications. So if you do it totally on your own, you're looking at a minimum probably about $1,500 just in the mandatory fees to get all this stuff. If you want help, which is what our company helps people with, there's everything from full service packages, to kind of just small piecemeal help that's kind of a la carte. So some people just want to have their hand held through the whole process, and that usually costs. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this into a sales pitch, but you asked. So our
No, you're
price
fine.
for full service package at the time of this recording is $5,500. That's for a single applicant. And then if there's additional family members who want to apply that have the same ancestor, there's discounts for each additional family member because a lot of the documentation is shared.
Or the
And
same.
then
Yeah.
everything in between, if somebody wants, instead of like, well, I don't need my hand held through the whole process, but I just need kind of a roadmap, we can make that roadmap for somebody that's specific to their case and their documentation. It's kind of like a DIY guide, and that's about $1,200. If somebody's driven and motivated to do it on their own, like I was, but they still just want to talk to a professional at the beginning to at least be pointed in the right direction, then we could just do, an hour consultation with somebody. And we've even found that people have been doing that and gotten a lot of value out of it because some people want to do a lot of the work themselves. Like I said, it's a marathon and not a sprint. But
Yeah.
we get so many contacts from people who say, I started this process and I submitted my application to the consulate and they rejected me. And then we ask a few more questions and we realize that all they did was go to the consulate with like a birth certificate. It's like, man, you didn't read any of their instructions and now you've just lost 2 years of time. And now the law changed. So just speaking to somebody up front, just to get pointed in the right direction and know you're not going to be making mistakes, will save you potentially years and thousands of dollars of mistakes. So, yeah, the cost is however much you're willing to spend, and if you're very motivated, like I was, like I said, I wasted no time getting all the paperwork. Then it's totally possible. But the reality is, it's a lot of paperwork to get. People have lives, they have families, they have kids. You start collecting some paperwork, life gets in the way, and then years pass. I mean, we see that all the time. So our goal is to
Yeah.
empower people. If we're not going to do all the work for you, we at least want to give you some tools to do it yourself so you can actually make it happen because the laws can change like we've just seen, and we want people to be successful with this.
So somebody like myself, as of today's date, May 22nd, 2025, who hasn't started the process at all, and my closest lineage is great grandparents. I come to you, Anthony. Your response is going to be, well, with the new law, you're kind of SOL, right? But then,
Yes,
am I
no, you're
wrong?
correct.
Wrong?
With the new law, you are SOL with the 2 generation limit. I would say if
Yeah.
you want to speak with an attorney, an Italian attorney, who would be willing to challenge the
Yeah.
constitutionality of this change, I can put you in touch with a few.
Yeah.
We don't endorse particular attorneys. We just like to connect people and say, here's some people you can reach out to. And the
Sure.
good attorneys will say, this is uncharted territory. There are no guarantees here because this is all
Yeah.
unprecedented. But for people who really want it, somebody like you, I would say, there's potential in court. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not going to say that they're like, yeah, you
Yeah.
totally have the green light. Maybe you do. And we'll see, speculation here, spoiler. Maybe in a year and a half, this gets overturned because, like I said, the courts are just going to get absolutely flooded now. And that's just going to,
Bombarded.
so we'll see.
But somebody that has already started the process prior to March 27th, this would be, in my opinion, prime time to come to somebody like yourself, your business, to try and, because now it's kind of a sense of urgency to try and speed up this process and work with your company to try and get their citizenship faster
Yes.
in that
Yes,
case.
especially if they manage to book an appointment before March 27th, and by book I mean even if they just have one reserved, it could be 3 years from now. If they have it
Yeah.
reserved before March
Yeah.
27th, if they have a case filed in court, which if they have a case filed in court, they're already working with an attorney. They're way further down the line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and even if people just want to reach out and ask, like, do I even have a chance here? We're happy to just take a quick look and do preliminary research on somebody's case. It's
Right.
worth looking at because you never know, there might be some kind of loophole or some unique situation
Yeah.
in which somebody would qualify. And there's also, even for people who maybe don't have Italian ancestry at all, who just want to live in Italy, there's the digital nomad visa, which people can get, which lets you stay in Italy for up to a year, and then you can renew it. And that's basically
Okay.
for people who either are freelancers or work for another company outside of Italy. So you basically have to prove you
Mm.
have a job, like you need to be, how do I want to say this, a qualified individual. So they want somebody who
Mm.
has a proof of income, who has some kind of at least a bachelor's degree, and they're going to come to Italy and work, but they're not going to be taking an Italian job. They'll be getting their income elsewhere. But you can legally be in Italy for that
Oh,
year. That's what the new digital nomad visa allows.
okay.
So that's really great. And then there's the
Well, that applies to me.
yeah, if you wanted to do that, you could apply for that. And that's people are getting those more and more easily, it seems, which is really great. Italy was really late to the party on the digital nomad visa, but I'm glad to see that that's a thing now.
Mm-hmm.
And then for people who are retired, there's the elective residency visa or just the retirement visa, which at that point you have to be in passive income state. You can't have income, so you have to show that you have pension, social security, etc., and that you can renew on a yearly basis as well. And then for people who really just want Italian citizenship but don't have Italian ancestry, it would be 10 years, continuous 10 years of legal residency in Italy, and then they could learn
Wow.
Italian, petition to naturalize, and then get their citizenship that way. There is a referendum coming up in June where people will vote on reducing that 10 years to 5 years, because that would put it more in line with the rest of Europe. But I'm not really optimistic that will go through.
Now, when you say residency, like, do you have to be in Italy for 365 days a year, or can you spend like 9 months in Italy and then maybe you want to spend 3 months back home here in the States? How does that
It's
work?
a bit of a gray area. You definitely don't have to be there 365 days. You have to have residency that's registered with the town where you live in. So, like, I have an
Okay.
apartment here. The town knows that I live here because it's registered with the town. And you do have to pass
Hmm.
kind of like, they do come check that you actually live there. So, anytime you move residencies, the police will come to your house and verify that you actually live there.
Oh,
If
wow.
if you wanted to go back to the States for a few weeks, I don't think that would be an issue. If it's months on end, that could present some problems because, in theory, they could check
Hmm.
passport control. At a minimum, you need to have registered residency in Italy because there's a clear record of that. But it's
Right. Right.
definitely not something where you can buy property and be there 2 months a year and rent it out the rest of the year.
Uh,
That's a no go. But I think the situation you're describing would be possible. Yeah.
in order to buy property, you need to be a citizen,
You actually
right?
don't. Anybody can buy property. It helps to be a citizen, because if you're trying to get mortgages, things like that, they're more likely to lend money to a citizen. But no, foreigners buy.
Sure.
I mean, everybody's seen the €1 houses. That those can be bought by anybody.
Yeah.
It's just staying here legally is the hard part. It's like, okay, I bought this
Right.
house, but I can only be here 90 days on a tourist visa. That's where the problems come in.
Oh, huh. Yeah. I mean, for me, my biggest, what I would love to do right now is, probably that digital nomad, um, thing, because I just want to go and, you know, kind of, you know, learn the culture and really learn the
Hmm.
language. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked into like Airbnbs, and you can get Airbnbs like crazy cheap
Hmm.
in Italy, comparatively to the US. I've seen Airbnbs on the Amalfi Coast for, less than $100 a night, and they're
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really incredible. I mean, the cost of living here is it's much less than the U.S. Of course, compared to the average income in Italy, which is much lower. So,
Hmm.
for those of us coming from the U.S., it does seem like everything is comparatively it is much cheaper than what we're used to. For the digital nomad visa, you would have to have prearranged some kind of housing agreement. So you would need to have like a lease agreement with a property and things like that.
Oh,
So that
okay.
that's one of the trickier parts for people, especially if you're not physically in Italy. It's like, okay, how do I get that arranged? And there's companies that can help
Hmm.
you. Like we can connect somebody like you with realtors that would help facilitate that for you, like the boots on the ground stuff that needs to be taken care of because you can't because you're not there.
Hmm.
Because that, from personal experience as
Hmm.
well, when I moved to Italy to apply for citizenship, I needed to have housing and I paid a company to help me with that because like I wasn't there. I'm not gonna
Mm.
go search around for apartments. I just needed a place to live that met the requirements for me to apply for citizenship, and it worked out.
Gotcha. So I know you visited all 20 regions. Did you spend a accumulated amount of time in each region, or did you just kind of like long vacations in each region from outside of where you're at
It
living
was
now?
basically just vacations. So my home base has always been here in
Hmm.
Umbria. The I would say the region I've spent the most time in outside of Umbria would be. That's a good question. Probably Campania, where the Amalfi Coast and Naples is, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
Sicily. Palermo is one of my favorite cities in Italy. It's so much fun. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, it's great. It's
Yeah.
just like
That's where my tutor is in
okay,
Sicily, and I can't remember which town she's in or not. But yeah, she speaks up Palermo quite a
yeah,
bit.
it's a big city, but it's not that big. Like it's small enough where you can
Hmm.
walk pretty much everywhere, and it's just really raw and the Sicilian markets. There's three main markets in the city, so like you go basically every
Mm.
morning until like 3 p.m. It's just exactly what you're picturing in your head. It's just like guys, chopping the heads off of fish and yelling at you to buy their vegetables and produce and then like and it's like all this street food you can just like pick whatever you want and they'll just sit you down at a table and like I
So
could literally
awesome.
just sit there and just drink beer and eat seafood and people watch all day.
That's so awesome. That's so cool. What so outside of the one business of helping people become Italian citizens, you said you have another business. What's your other
Yeah,
business?
so when I moved out here, I just, I spent kind of that first year just traveling all around Italy and just was falling in love with the country more and more and traveling a lot and getting more and more questions from people for travel tips, recommendations. So I just said, I'm just going to
Mm.
start sharing this information publicly. So I started a website, which is anthonyinitaly.com, which has kind of just turned into this multimedia, as you know. It's all you're never in one medium. So it's a website where if people have
Yep.
questions about like where to go on the Amalfi Coast, they want itineraries for Rome, they want itinerary for like a solo trip in Palermo. I have it all on my website. I have recommendations on where I would stay, whether it's places I've stayed myself or I've researched and recommend other people to stay, or tours that I've done, or for people who are moving to Italy, how to get a SIM card here and what SIM card I use and what I recommend, how to maintain your US phone number while you're living in Italy, because sometimes you need, one-time passcodes for logging into US banks, all those kind of boring technicalities. I just put those all on my website as I learn them because people keep asking and I want to share that information. And so I have the website, which is also turned into a social media presence. So I do a lot of stuff on Instagram as well, which I really enjoy, which has kind of just served as a big
Mm-hmm.
marketing tool for the citizenship company for Become Italiani,
Mm-hmm.
also for the travel information, and also I do if somebody wants help planning a trip, I'll help them do consultation calls to help plan a trip because it can be kind of overwhelming for somebody who's never been to Italy. It's like where do you go,
Mm-hmm.
where do you stay, how much time do you spend in each city.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my damn best to maintain a human connection with people on this kind of stuff because now with AI, it's so easy to just it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
ChatGPT, write me 100 blog posts about travel in Italy. It's like now that's everywhere. So I just want to give people real quality content that is actually practical and will help give them an authentic experience. And I also recently started a podcast, which I
Yeah, I've listened. Yeah,
yeah,
great.
thank you. Yeah, I just released that. It's just called the Anthony in Italy podcast. I released that about a month ago. Just 5 episodes so far, and we'll see where that goes. As you know, making a podcast is kind of a full-time job, so I mainly just did that because I've been lucky enough to meet so many interesting people here, and we have such amazing
Hmm.
conversations. And I just think more people need to hear this, because this is a side of Italy that you don't really
Yeah.
see on social media. You don't really see on TV. What's the experience of the different experiences that people have in Italy? I want to be able to share that. So I've been doing those, and that's a lot of fun. So it's a little bit of everything related to Italy, and that's it.
Dude, you're like living the life, man. That sounds so awesome. That sounds so awesome compared to the grind of living in the States, or if you're an entrepreneur in the States,
Yeah,
That's so
I
cool.
appreciate that. I am living the dream. I mean, I'm still in awe when I walk out in my city and it's just a museum everywhere I go. Right now I'm in Perugia, and
Yeah.
it's just a city that's even, it's older than Rome when you look at it at its roots. And it's like, I can just like walk through these arches every day, and it's spectacular. Italy's not, it's not perfect, and people who live here will tell you that. There's
Yeah.
things I miss about the U.S. Of course, I miss my family and my friends more than anything. But
Sure.
there are things that if you come here, I'll tell people like yourself, if you're an entrepreneur and you're very driven, that it's a bit of a adjustment coming to Italy, where that is not really on the forefront of the culture
Mm.
outside of, unless you go to somewhere like Milan, which is kind of the financial center of Italy. Italy is a pretty
Hmm.
relaxed culture in many ways, including entrepreneurial, you know, the ways, including entrepreneurial. So
Endeavors.
you kind of definitely
Yeah.
have to be self-motivated. Went to Italy to just hustle
Mm.
and get up at 5:30 and do your cold plunge and be in bed by 9. You're gonna miss out, because Italy, everything happens after 10 p.m. All the good stuff, at least. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I mean, of course, it depends on what you're into, but if you're into, live music or events, or, yeah, it all happens
Yeah.
after dinner. Dinner is at 9 p.m. So then after dinner is when people go out. Yeah.
9. Wow.
Yeah. So it's an adjustment.
That's Yeah, I mean, I've always heard that Italy is very, very relaxed culture and a very slow paced.
Yes.
I mean, they take their time when they eat. I mean, my lesson this week with my tutor, we got into a conversation about food because I was telling her how I just watched the movie on Netflix called
Mm.
Nonas. I don't know if you
Yeah,
are
I saw it.
familiar with it. Yeah, great, great, cool. It was a really cool movie, and she was telling me, she's like, oh no, like our dinners are 4 hours long.
Yeah.
I'm like 4 hours. That's crazy. Yeah, because she's like, oh yeah, we have the antipasto, and then we have the primo, and then the secondo. I'm like, that's so much damn
Yeah.
food. Holy cow.
It's so funny. They're Italians. It's they make their own comedy with their food culture, but that's why we love them. They have some of the best food in the world for a reason.
Yeah. Uh, what your mechanical engineering degree? Because you were a licensed ME.
Licensed professional engineer. Yeah, and I studied mechanical.
Oh, you were a licensed
Yeah.
PE. So did you are you able to keep that up, or have you just kind of let
No,
that
I still have it. I
go?
work too hard to earn that. I'm going to maintain it. You basically just have to do continuing
Good.
education hours every 2 years. You have to submit. And
Uh-huh.
who knows? I'll always keep that in my back pocket if I want to use it again one day. But yeah, engineering
Yeah.
is it.
I assume you could do that remotely too. The continuing
Oh
ed.
yeah, the continuing ed is yeah. There's like courses online. That's
Mm.
very easy to do remotely. It's yeah, engineering is a great profession. It's just my priority at the time when I came to Italy was I wanted freedom. Which of
Yeah,
course,
I
going
get
from
that.
employee to entrepreneur is not exactly freedom, as you know, but I wanted to have the
Yeah.
the liberty to, if I want to go spend a week in Sicily and keep working, I don't want to ask somebody's permission to do that. And to
Yeah.
just create something on your own from the ground up has been really rewarding, especially with the
Hmm.
travel website, when if I can give somebody travel recommendations, and or they just read my website and I've never met them, and then they just send me a message out of the blue and they're like, hey, we followed your Amalfi Coast itinerary and it was our best vacation, the kids loved it, blah blah.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. And then with the citizenship stuff, like helping people get their passports, like we have a young couple that we help them get their citizenship, and now they're living in Italy. He's going to chef school. I mean, they're just living their best life, and to be able to help people do
Wow.
that is amazing. And engineering, when if you have like a normal job, you're just really removed from all that. You're just kind of working, Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations, and there's merit
Yeah.
to that as well. I
Yep.
think it's good for everybody to go through that, and there's obviously something to be said for
Yeah.
stability, and there's
Hmm.
that as well. But I just think the
I agree.
entrepreneurial life is so
Are
much
you
more
married?
exciting. No, are you? Oh, how much time do you
Long-term girlfriend, but my curiosity is how is dating compare in Italy compared to the US?
have? It's interesting. The, socially in general, it's different because at least where I'm from in the U.S. is the suburbs of Atlanta. So I didn't grow up in a city. I grew up in the suburbs, like I think most people in the U.S. So to meet
Yeah.
people,
Hmm.
you have to either use like dating apps to like actually find people, or go out with friends, or have connections through friends. Everything is there's more effort in the US to like get out in these third spaces. In Italy, the third space is
Hmm.
just it's just kind of the default. Like from where I am now, I can walk to, I don't even know, probably 300 restaurants, a bunch of great bars. The walkability of things and kind of the urbanization of even small towns. I mean, I was not where I'm living in now, but there was another town I was in that has like 40,000 people. But it's this concentrated little center with a bunch of great bars and restaurants and just so much opportunity to just walk out of the house and just bump into people and meet people. So meeting people here is
Hmm.
much, much easier. Just actually making contact with people. Dating is just totally different because Italians in general are much more closed than what the stereotypes would lead us to believe. When it comes to dating, in my experience, don't want to generalize, but in my experience with Italian women, they tend to be more closed off to Americans. Not Americans,
Huh.
foreigners. Like the story you see,
Okay.
like our Instagram, they just throw it in our faces. It's this, pretty blonde American girl moves to Italy. Some Italian guy meets her, she falls
Hmm.
in love with him, and then they get married, probably
Yeah.
move back to the US. That does not happen in
Yeah.
reverse. The American guy that goes to Italy falls in love with an Italian. I never see that. It happens, but it's so rare, and
Yeah.
why that is, I'm not really sure. I think women just tend to be more enchanted by the Italian guy's funny accent, even though he speaks terrible English. They just don't care because they just think it's so
Hmm.
adorable, and they're very charming and
Hmm.
romantic, etc. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I don't want to get myself into trouble with gender stereotyping here, but come hang out in Perugia, and we'll have the conversations out on the street with some of my friends, and you'll get the perspective,
Okay.
especially from people
Okay.
who've lived here a lot longer than me. I've only been here 3 years. I have friends. One of my best friends, he's been here almost 17 years. He even says, I still would like to be with a girl that speaks fluent English, even though his Italian is perfect. He still would like to be able
Yeah.
to connect with somebody at the level that he feels like he can. And if they don't
Yeah.
really speak good English, it's kind of a sign that there's going to be a big cultural gap if they don't speak fluent English, because
Mm.
maybe they haven't lived abroad, maybe they haven't. So, and it's not saying one is better than the other. It's like, if they don't speak English, it doesn't mean they're a lesser person. It's just that it's a sign of a difference between the two people.
That's fascinating.
And
I kind of got in this discussion with my tutor as well because I'm genuinely curious about the cultural differences. She kind of explained to me that Italian men, not that I don't think that she's ever like dated or tried to date a foreigner, But she said Italian men are extremely like they have no problem approaching you. You know, they have no problem, you know, catcalling you across the street and all of that stuff. And you know, she would get like approached all the time by men. So on one side, you know, when you are approached all the time, I'm sure like you've got to have some really good riz to be able to get the attention of an attractive Italian female.
Absolutely, because they're so used to it. I mean, you're competing with some of the
Right.
most aggressive, I'll say most persistent and charming men.
Persistent. Yeah.
You got to stand out among them, and if they're into those type of men,
Yeah.
you might as well just give up because you can't be that. They have to be the type
Yeah.
that are more into
Yeah.
something. Like, you know, maybe they want a foreign guy. And I met plenty of Italian girls that say, I'm done with Italian guys for those exact reasons. They're just too aggressive or they're obsessed with their mom or all the, you know, all the stereotypes. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
true.
She said that. Yeah. Yeah. She said many Italian men are what she calls Latin lovers, especially Neopot- Neapolitan
Yeah.
Italians, where they, you know, they're little whores. They like their women. You know, I just laughed at that. It's just so funny how the culture is so different, but yet the same in so many ways. You know.
Yes. Yes. And I had a friend tell me, he's like what I would consider like just a very pure Italian guy. Like he kind of, if you want an example of kind of what we're describing, I would put him in that category. He says, he's like, yeah, when we leave Italy on vacation, we can pick up any girl we want because we have the best practice in the world by dealing with Italian women.
Yeah.
It's like it's a mountain that you have to climb. But you talk to the women and they say, we're that way because the Italian men are so aggressive. So it's like a chicken and egg thing. It's like, and now here we are. How many centuries of this behavior has turned into like, you know,
Yeah.
it takes two to tango. Are the women this way because the men are aggressive or vice versa? It's a good question. I don't know.
So I would be curious if, I mean, do you consider yourself more of a reserved person when you're approaching a woman or in Italy? I mean, look, to me, after just talking to you for the last hour and just based on your mannerisms, I would assume that you're not up there going, "Hey, baby, how you doing?"
No,
You know,
not at all.
you know, you come off like you're a little bit more reserved, right? So, is it being more reserved? Do you think it's much harder to even swoon the attention of Italian women out there?
Probably. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't really have an issue
Yeah.
approaching, but I'm not
Okay.
gonna do a dog and pony show. That's just not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. I think. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You have to. Again, I'm not telling guys to be aggressive or annoying or violent or anything, but you do have to
Sure.
be persistent because some of my friends that are girls will say, "Yeah, you're too friendly." It's like, yeah, yeah.
You get put in the friend zone right away,
Yeah,
right?
because they don't really know. They're like, I don't know, he just didn't seem interested. But it's like we're from the U.S. and the U.S. is a big place. Everybody's different, of course. But I tend to be more like, I don't know. I want you to feel comfortable first. I'm not just
Sure.
going to come out
Yep.
swinging with, you know,
Yeah.
with all the romanticisms and the compliments and the catcalling and stuff. It's a delicate dance. There's a way to do it, and I'm by no means an expert.
Yeah, right. Do you anticipate or do you see yourself just permanently staying in Italy, or do you think this is going to be kind of a short-term thing, or are you just kind of going with the
I'm
flow?
kind of going with the flow. I'll definitely be here at least for several more years. I mean, I have no intentions of going back to the U.S. except for when my parents get older and I want to be closer to them at that stage in life. I do, you know, I miss my family a lot, but I love it here. When I'm not here, I miss it. So I'll be here for a while.
How often do you get back home?
I usually go twice a year. Definitely for the holidays. So far, it's been most of November and December. I actually just got back last week. I had to go kind of last minute for a funeral, unfortunately. So I usually go once or twice a
sorry to hear
year. it's nice. It's really nice to get back. I was just there for 3 weeks, and that was a good amount of time. Any less than that is a little bit too short. But it's a
Yeah.
good to touch base and reconnect with old friends, because when you move abroad, I mean, there's no way around it. You are obviously at a you're the one that moved away, so you have to put in the effort to maintain those
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anthony, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I learned so much. I'm glad we were able to connect because now I've got a friend and I got somebody. If I decide to get out to Italy, go out and break bread with. So,
Absolutely.
where can everyone reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing between becoming Italian and then your tourism
Yeah,
platform?
so the citizenship help, if they want to follow us on Instagram, it's Become Italiani. Or my personal one for all my travel stuff is just Anthony in Italy. If you just find me, Anthony in Italy, you'll get to where you want to go. Send me a DM. I'll, redirect you if you got citizenship questions. Christina, our attorney, she's really awesome. Really great working with people. So, yeah, just Anthony in Italy on Instagram, anthonyinitaly.com, and that's it. I really appreciate you having me on. How is if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been doing the
Yeah.
podcast now? A little over a year now, right?
No, actually, it'll be a year in July, I think, is when I had my first
Okay.
episode. I started prepping for everything in June of last year, so like buying the equipment and understanding like what I need to do. And I literally just this last month I've been building out a studio,
Yeah,
which you
looks
could see
good.
here in the back. Thank you. So I plan on having in-person interviews now, but I'm trying to get the lighting and the camera angles right. There's a science to it. So I'm still doing the virtual stuff, and then I'm really excited to have in-person interviews as well. And like you, I'm using it as a well, first and foremost, I love the podcast because I get to meet people like you. I get to meet so many interesting people. I've had great conversations, learning from so many different people, different walks of life. Um, but and then the other side of it is it helps with the marketing and the branding of all of my businesses. It creates more awareness. But that wasn't really my sole focus and started the podcast. My sole focus was really just I love having these conversations and learning about things.
That's awesome. And you still
So,
feel almost a year in, you feel like you've got kind of the same engine going. You still enjoying it? Yeah,
oh yeah,
good.
oh yeah. Even if not more now, because now that I've got the studio built out, I really want to have in person interviews, and I've already got a few lined up. But I did a test. I did a test run. I think it was this week. I did a test run with one person, and we did. I told her, I'm like, let's just do 30 minutes just to see how it
Yeah.
looks, see if I need to make any tweaks. We had an awesome conversation, right? It was one of my trainers in the gym, but then she also has an online business where she does online coaching. And so I wanted to talk to her about that because that's where our industry is, a lot of our industry is moving that way to online coaching.
Mm.
And she's helped so many great people lose weight, busy moms, all of that. Great conversation, right? And I go to upload it, and it didn't record any of the
Oh,
audio. So I'm
so you're
like,
just
oh my
silent. Perfect
god,
video, but you.
yeah. So we got to redo it. I understood what I did wrong. So it's trial and error like anything in life, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's a great learning
that's
experience.
awesome. Yeah, I'm way at the early stages. I just recently started it, and my setup is so rudimentary compared to yours. But my first thing was like, it's people that I know in person, so I was having them in person. And that just adds a whole level
Yeah,
of complexity because you have two mics in the same room. There's mic bleed. You have, with
yep,
this, I'm sure I'm not familiar with this platform, but we probably have our own audio tracks with the text that you can edit. It's nice
yep,
and clean. In person, it's just
yeah.
it's another ballgame, but the chemistry in person is obviously it's you just click better.
Yeah. And plus, like, I'm going from the last year, I've done, 100% virtual interviews, right? So when I first started, I just bought a little desk with a nice camera, and I bought a cloud filter for the microphone. I bought this Shure SMB, and that's how I did it, right? I didn't want to use my laptop. I wanted it to look
Hmm.
somewhat professional so that I can attract the right guests. And now I'm moving to the studio where it's a 3 camera setup, up to 4 microphones. So now you've got this, you know, I've got all of these devices now that are running the cameras, running the audio, running lighting, all of that stuff. So it's a lot harder, especially when that's not your
Mm.
forte. And I don't have anybody local that I know that could help, like, come out and help me set up and, like, okay, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm looking, so we'll see. But yeah, it's a whole different ball game. But for you, here's what the crazy thing is. This is like kind of what you're doing, like just the super basic 2 microphone single camera setup. Like, I know people. Well, prime example, there is a podcast out there called Bigger Pockets that's kind of focused toward real estate investors, and they started like early on, like early on, and they were doing, it was 100% virtual interviews with just various people in the real estate industry. And they've got, I think they've got over 1,000 episodes. They ended up selling the podcast, I think, to private equity for $40 million. Yeah, and it's all 100% virtual, like nothing fancy, nothing, just super basic. And they just been, like you've been saying this whole interview, it's about the marathon. They just kept putting episodes out. So that's kind of my
That's
focus now
incredible.
too.
Well, best of luck. It looks like you've been successful so far, and it's really great to see.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. My goal, Anthony, is I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it, but it's a goal. I compete in jujitsu, and there is a competition in Rome in October.
Okay.
I would love to go do the competition and have an extended stay where I can, be a tourist for a couple of weeks, and, maybe come see you. I would love to go see my tutor as
Yeah.
well. So I'll have to definitely let you know if I can make that happen. But it's very hard to get away from the
Yeah,
businesses.
I can
That's the only
imagine.
thing.
Yeah, I hope you can. Anything I can
Yeah.
do to help, let me know.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Again, thanks so much for coming on. I'll be sure to put your contact info in the show notes, and we'll be talking
Sounds great.
soon.
Thanks, Bo.
Thank you.